Exactly, that helps. If we changed ours to the second and fourth, then I could do it. For the regular. You can make that motion. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the new year, 2025. It's great to see all of you here in the audience tonight. And for those of you at home, thank you for tuning in. I'll call the Lakewood City Council meeting for this Monday, January 6, 2025 to order. Madam Clerk, if you'd please call the roll.
Councilmember Bao. Here. Councilmember Boki.
Here.
Councilmember Brandsbetter.
Here.
Boricella.
Here.
Councilmember Pearson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Moss has been excused, and Mayor Whalen.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Now, if you'd please stand and join me in a brief moment of silence in recognition of those unfortunate victims of the tragedy in New Orleans this past week, as well as for other tragedies around this great nation and the globe, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to this nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, again, what a wonderful way to start the new year with our proclamation and presentation portion of tonight's agenda. And tonight, the council is pleased to present a proclamation declaring January 2025 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service. And for receipt of this proclamation, I've got Kimmy Ginn from the MLK Committee and other representatives who may be here. Please feel free to join me at the podium and we'll present the proclamation. We'll get some information from Kimmy about the event and celebration that we will have this weekend. And we will certainly have an opportunity for photo. Kimmy.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
You need to come down more often. Yeah. Still doing that Seattle thing?
Can't.
Right. Well, it is indeed my distinct pleasure as the mayor of this great city to present this proclamation on behalf of all of us here in the City Council. Whereas Monday, January 2025 is designated as a federal holiday, celebrating the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who dedicated his life to the fundamental principles of freedom, opportunity, and equal justice to all. And whereas such recognition is a direct result of his many contributions to society through his deeds and words, and whereas through his March on Washington and the I Have a Dream speech, Dr. King reached a worldwide audience and was recognized by people from all walks of life as the conscience of an entire nation. And whereas all Americans are reminded that our nation recognizes that all men are created equal and should be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And whereas the city of Lakewood is committed to the ideals of a free society and is a community of great cultural diversity, which it values and celebrates and is dedicated to the fraternity and community of all people. And whereas the city of Lakewood will again honor the distinguished legacy of Dr. King by uniting this community for an MLK Welcome Walk for our beloved community on Saturday, January 11, 2025 at noon at Fort Silicon Park. And whereas the city will also host an art reception on Monday, January 13 from 5 to 7 p.m. here at the City Hall, featuring the work of artist Rodney King, jazz from saxophonist Maurice Itzen, and a spoken word performance by Shadiah Wilson Dunham. And in light of the recognition week, now therefore, the Lakewood City Council hereby proclaims Monday, January 2025 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service in the city of Lakewood. And we invite all residents to join us in this observance by attending the many events set for this week and to enjoy the opportunity to come together as community. Proclaim the 6th day of January 2025, the Lakewood City Council. And Kimmy, thank you for all the work you have done on behalf of the committee and certainly on behalf of this incredibly diverse and wonderfully vibrant community. Thank you for your service.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
thank you.
Thank you.
And the microphone is yours.
Well, of course, this can't be done just by one individual. And I want to pay a special tribute to Sally Martinez, your staff person who took the lead on this and brought together a fabulous committee that's worked diligently and intentionally to bring a fantastic celebration to honor Dr. King. As the CEO and president of Vibrant Schools, I'm honored to be one of the sponsors this year, not only to celebrate Dr. King's dream, but to give the city of Lakewood the opportunity to become truly a bona fide, beloved community. So part of what's going to happen on January 11th is the launch of what I believe to be a campaign, not just a day. You know, we talk about Dr. King, a day of service, but it has to be a 365. If we got a leap year, it's 366 days of making sure that we're kinder to one another, more respectful to one another, unite together, be a community that truly believes that we can make this world a better place, each individual. Our committee is thrilled to be able to put together this fantastic opportunity. Council people, you will see that we have wonderful swag for you. So if you look around your seats there, it's more than just saying something. It's making sure we're messaging on a regular basis. So I invite all of the community that's here tonight and those listening, please come out January 11th, 12 to 3 at the Fort Steilacoom Park and help us launch the Beloved Community Campaign. I believe the city of Lakewood can be the vanguard to being a beloved community that is truly a model for all cities. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity, the council folks and the community of Lakewood. Let's go.
Hold on. We have to do the photograph.
Oh,
Come on
that's
up.
right.
Well, thank you, Kimmy and Martin Luther King Committee representatives for putting together an incredible program that we're going to enjoy this weekend. Next, we have our Partners for Parks presentation, and for this, I'll have Alan Billingsley will come on up on behalf of Partners for Parks, and he will talk a little bit about the project, share a video, and I think present a check. Alan.
Can we start with the video? Because the video is worth 1,000 words and I don't know 1,000 words.
Well,
So
we usually like $1,000, but I think you have 99 of those, so let's see.
I know your parents don't like me. They turn me away from the door. If I had my life to live over.
We're a group of people who really just want to help our community.
Good.
I don't know.
Yeah.
that was a short video of the launch of the public section of our H Barn fundraiser. And here comes the music again. Everybody dance. The city of Lakewood's known for its collaborations and partnerships. And it was originally formed based on that sort of a concept. Partners for Parks was created by businesses and citizens in the city of Lakewood who wanted to support the parks and take that partnership to the next level. Since incorporation, Partners for Parks has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars and thousands of man hours to make Lakewood's parks better. So taking on the barn restoration was really taking it up to the next level for Partners for Parks. We're excited and very pleased to have that partnership with the city of Lakewood to make this project come to fruition. Our business partners have now started the business portion of our campaign. We've raised 2.5 million. Our goal for the business section is going to be another 500,000. That will get us to the 3 million out of the 3.5 million that we plan to raise. So we're well on our way to the completion of the project. It is now in the city's hands to get the engineering and the drawings done for this project. We have $1 million set aside, ready to send to the city of Lakewood to fund that portion of the project at this time. So we're excited to see it go to the next level. We're on track for our fundraising. We expect to make it at sometime around June this year to hit the $3.5 million range. So this is going to be an amazing accomplishment and a partnership between the city of Lakewood and Partners for Parks and the people that live here. Something that we need. This gathering place will be an exceptional utility building for us besides just preserving the history of our area. Partner for Parks is about relationships, and we have relationships with the Names Foundation. A member of the board lives in the city of Lakewood, is retiring from that board, and we gave a barn tour to the head of that Names Foundation and this portion of their board. And they so love what has happened in the park over the last few years, particularly the projects done by Partners for Parks, the dog park, the trail around Wog Hop, the big toy, all of these things really have impressed this individual. And as they exit the Names Foundation, they wanted to make another donation to Partners for Parks for a specific project. And the project that they have selected is redoing the fence around the dog park. So tonight we have to present to the city of Lakewood a check for $990,000. 99,000 for $200 million in order to get that project underway. And that will be run through Partners for Parks as a 501c3. So we have that check today. We'd like to have Partners for Parks get a picture with you all.
Absolutely. I've got a pen. Do you want me to add that extra digit in there? Yeah.
Perfect.
That's the same with the big toilet. It'll be the next project of the
Yeah.
barn.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's been 20 years. I didn't realize that fence was that. Yeah, I'm looking back.
Yeah.
Yeah, go right.
Well, fabulous. It's always a wonderful day in the city of Lakewood to receive a wonderful contribution from a valued partner such as Partners for Parks and certainly the Names Foundation. So we want to thank all of your colleagues and the contributors for a really a fabulous, very magnanimous contribution. So thank you for that. It will be well used and well loved out there at the dog park. So tonight we don't have a youth council report, so we'll turn to our Clover Park School District report from our board member, Janet Caldwell. Janet.
Is it on? Okay, thanks. Sorry. A first time giving a report, believe it or not, every time I've been scheduled to come, something has come up. So a good evening and happy new year to you all. I appreciate being here and a big thank you to you and the community who have made the holidays better for Clover Park School District students and families. This in December, we elected or re-elected all board directors to their current positions. So Alyssa Anderson Pearson has been reelected as president, Brian Thomas as vice president, and myself as a legislative representative, and these are one-year terms. We do have a school board director, David Anderson, who has resigned his position, and that is effective today. So we are going to be launching an application process, which is going to come before the board at our Tuesday meeting. And we are going to determine the process that we're going to follow to fill that position until the election on November 4th. This one seems just kind of awkward because it seems very self-serving. But did you know that January is School Board Appreciation Month?
Oh.
Yeah, I thought so, but I thought, I must say it anyway. That's all it just says there. But one of our staff members, Brian, I hope I'm saying this right, Gable, he received a couple of fantastic awards that they presented at the December school board meeting as well, from the Assessment Coordinators Network. I didn't even know such a network existed until he was before the board and receiving these amazing awards. And you're like, wow, all about data. Didn't even know that was a thing, but he does some amazing work. And it was really neat to see that his work was highlighted and brought forward
Right.
as a member of our learning community and our improving student learning. And if you know anyone, we still need to hire bus drivers and paraprofessionals. Those are students, not students, those are staff in the classrooms who support students in all types of areas. Bus drivers, I think you understand what they do, but it's a highly competitive area right now. People are offering bonuses, things like that. I'm not sure about Clover Park, but there's many school districts where I've seen postings, billboards even. Please come work with us. We need you to drive our children to school and get them there safely. There are videos that Clover Park produces twice a month. If I didn't know if you knew that, they're featuring learning in motion. So those are things that are happening inside the classrooms right now, where teachers are highlighted doing what they do and creating amazing learning spaces for students. And they're on the district YouTube channel in the Learning in Motion playlist. And one of the last things I'm going to leave you with, just in case you didn't know, is that you could follow the Clover Park School District and like us on Facebook, Instagram, and X, which is formerly Twitter. And anyway, you get access to the district news announcements and lots of pictures of students and staff. Upcoming, again, like I said, Tuesday is our next board meeting. And then we have another one, if you can't make that one. It's on the 27th. Not that anybody needs to know, but it's my sister's birthday. So you are welcome anytime. And I just appreciate this opportunity to come before you and present this update. I haven't done this before, so. What about him? Oh, so you know that Ron got Superintendent of the Year.
Yes.
That was like amazing. I actually got to be there at the WASDA conference in Spokane where that happened. Yeah, my gosh, yeah. And not that you need to know this either, but my Clover Park School District swag came in. So I like have a jacket now and I have like a shirt and a bag, which none of it's here. But I just want you to know that it's very nice stuff. I'm working on name tags next because everybody deserves a very nice name tag. So, if you have any questions, I can write them down and take them back, but I can't answer them.
You might be able to, but we'll ask if they have any questions nonetheless.
Okay.
Councilmember Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your being here and updating us and this starting the year off with a menu of good news. That last school year, there were some student-initiated efforts that included some videos and things that dealt with student looking to on a peer-to-peer relationship deal with the opioid crisis and how that might be abated. And I am wondering whether students are having similar things, whether on that theme or another theme that they're undertaking this year, where that they're planning to produce for not just for internal things, but the videos last year were promoted publicly and regionally to be able to go and do that. And we're very much respected and viewed to be effective. And so I'm wondering whether we've got that same level of initiative percolating this year within the students on an issue that they think is important.
I wrote it down. I do not have an answer for you.
Any other questions?
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for coming. It's great to see you and welcome to 2025. That concludes the proclamation and presentation section of tonight's agenda. We now turn to the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. Public comments are accepted by mail, email, or by live, virtual, or in-person comment. Comments certainly may be submitted in advance by mail or email to our city clerk, Ms. Brianna Schumacher at bschumacher@cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to an hour before the meeting have been provided to the council electronically. And for purposes of our record, the clerk will read the names of any of those who have submitted comments in advance.
Mayor, the city council received no comments in advance of this evening's meeting.
Thank you very much. Tonight, members of the audience may comment on items pertaining to city business under the public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. We ask that if you've signed in to address the council and provide public comment, please just state your name and residence of record, and then you'll be able to proceed with your 3 minutes. Certainly, those who are participating virtually could provide live virtual public comment by joining the Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling the dial phone or the telephone number 253-215-8782, entering the meeting ID number 868-7263-2373, and then upon entering the meeting, use the raise the hand feature to be called upon. So tonight, I will first call on those who are appearing via Zoom and who have their virtual hand raised to speak, followed by those who have signed in here physically to speak. So Madam Clerk, if you have some folks. Looks like the first individual with a hand raised is Mr. Dennis Haugen.
Hi, Dennis Haugen, from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, formerly of Lakewood as of about 5.5 years. But just some good news. About 5 or 6 years ago, when you became a sanctuary state, there was a battle to build a wall. And a considerable amount of wall was completed. And I showed a video from YouTube of the wall and and how it's constructed. And then bear in mind that it's a tool to make Border Patrol more efficient at their job. I checked and those videos are all still there because the wall will be talked about over the next month or two. You'll hear about it. And there you can get an idea how it's constructed. And if you're mechanically inclined, have some idea of how it works to help the Border Patrol and ICE be more efficient at their job. One of the guys that I like to listen to is Tom Homan. He's a former ICE director, he's been in for many, many years, and he knows what he's doing. And he always quotes the law when he talks, and exactly what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. And so I don't think there'll be any backing down. And of course, the head of Homeland Security will be Governor Noem. And being from South Dakota, I know her patterns very well, and she's the kind of person that doesn't back down either. There's other good news that have come in there, like listening to the school board here. I don't hear anything about goals to get people's grades up, to show evidence that they're learning. And there's some strange trends going on, like I think in Washington State, you no longer have to take a test in order to get a law degree or get accepted by the bar. Then another state like New Jersey just passed a law that teachers do not have to show or demonstrate that they're competent in math, reading, and writing. And I can assure you that there's going to be a lot of talk about this in the near future, very near future. Anyway, my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, James Dunlop.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you a bit. It's a bit muddled.
Oh, okay. I'll try and get through another way. Okay.
That's better. If you want to proceed, go ahead.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. My name is James Dunlop, and I'm a Lakewood resident. I gather that you're having a vote on dissolving the Landmarks and Heritage Advisory Board, and I would suggest that this is a bad idea. I mean, I understand that you say that you've had problems with recruitment and getting, I suppose, community interest and getting quorum, although I believe that you have been able to get quorum. There's a certain controversy about quora and claims about there not being a quora and people turning up and not being allowed into the meeting. But on a sort of broader sense, you know, this is about Lakewood's history, and having a committee to look at Lakewood's landmarks and its heritage. I mean, its heritage is important. If you take away a country's history or a city's history, you know, there is nothing left. I mean, I suppose you think of Cambodia and Pol Pot and Year Zero, and I mean, in communist regimes very much like to erase countries' histories, because if you erase a country's history, then it gives you more freedom. People don't remember what it was like in the past. And given what's been happening to Lakewood recently, for example, the destruction of the Tensler Library, which was, I think, very much part of Lakewood's, I suppose, post-war history, and the destruction of its natural habitat. I mean, I suppose a landmark is not just about buildings, it's about trees and its natural heritage, and erasing a lot of what Lakewood was, again, in terms of its natural environment. And I suppose this has been going on for some time, but it seems that the city is just perhaps not taking an active role in guiding the city in terms of its history. I know you've just had a presentation on the park, and you can tell while you're talking about the H barn and whatever, but it's for Lakewood deciding that one particular thing is history and we're going to forget everything else. And you need this board to recognize the importance of honoring the city's history, because if you take away the city's history, or if you create some ersatz history, or the history you want to create, the history, if you in a sense try to write the local history books, you're not going to get an accurate picture of what Lakewood is, and you're basically destroying Lakewood's soul. And yes, you are destroying its community as well.
Thank you. That appears to be the last Zoom participant with a hand raised. I'll give it a couple of seconds, Madam Clerk, to make sure we're not missing anyone.
Mayor, there are no other virtual hands raised at this time.
Very good. Then I will go to those who have signed in on the sign-in sheet. The first is Mr. Glenn Spieth.
My name is Glenn Spieth. I live in Lakewood. I'm a member of the Landmarks Board as well as the Lakewood Historical Society. I learned about the dissolving of the Landmarks Board when I looked at the agenda tonight or this afternoon. Also found out that I did not apply by 12/31. I did not apply for the Landmarks Board. Also, never received a notice of either items. Most meetings that we had were failures of the staff and online participation in Zoom that never worked. We had members of the board that were online that couldn't get into the meeting. So I know of very few meetings and that we didn't really have a quorum, whether they were canceled or not. The staff had always canceled most of the meetings ahead of time because of lack of business. The Landmarks Board never had a staff priority. Karen Devereaux was the only staff person that was consistent helper. To digress a little bit, I drafted, wrote, had reviewed 26 historical markers for Lakewood over the past 26 years. I ordered 22 of those markers, and the last 4 that were done by the staff, I still don't know the status of, whether they were completed or not. For each of those markers, or at least for many of them, I went to the mountains behind Ording. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spieth. Next, Christina Minetti.
Christina Minetti, Lakewood, historian and vice chair of the Landmarks and Heritage Advisory Board member since March 2021. I also found out by chance that tonight the city council will be voting on whether to axe LHAB. Neither I nor the chair, Mr. Spieth, active on this board for decades, were even informed, much less did anyone ask the board's opinion. The city staff handling of this has been arrogant and rude. This lack of transparency has been compounded by the fact that the city staff has been providing the city council with incorrect information. At LHAB's joint meeting with the city council in early September, a staff member reported to the city council that almost all of our meetings had been canceled since November 2023 because of our inability to meet quorum. This is not true. On September 9th, I sent a letter to all the city council members in which I listed the reasons why LHAB meetings had been canceled, with emails from the city staff stating that they had been canceled due to staffing problems or lack of agenda items. I also sent this to Mr. Lauricella, who's the liaison. So the truth is that just one was canceled due to a lack of quorum, and the rest had been canceled because of staff reasons. This complete miss or disinformation, 10 meetings have been canceled due to a lack of quorum, said Mr. Caulfield at the study session in December. Even though every council member knew this was not true, not a single one of you protested or corrected Mr. Caulfield as if choreographed. And Mr. Spieth also didn't reapply because he didn't know he was supposed to. Another implied reason that Mr. Caulfield gave was that the city staff had zero success recruiting new members. Please list how it has tried to recruit people. No doubt recruiting people would be easier if LHAB were actually able to engage in more meaningful activities. It's been clear that the city's intention has been to limit the board to trivial matters. The board has not been consulted or involved in decisions related to our city's historical buildings, such as the Tensor Library or even its log. The Little Red Schoolhouse and the historic American Lake South School, demolished for a warehouse parking lot, were similarly never a topic of discussion. Yes, I know they don't belong to the city, but the city surely could have advocated for them and even saved them if it wanted to. Yes, the board is impotent because the city demands impotence. No buildings or sites can be designated as historic and protected unless the owner nominates or approves it himself, just like trees. Virtually none are protected because this might infringe on property owners' rights, which means that neither trees nor historical buildings are protected here. Of course, in Lakewood, nothing should stand in the way of developers' plans. The city of Lakewood needs a historical board, but even more, it needs a city that is brave enough to stand up for our city's historical and natural heritage. I ask, therefore, that you postpone your vote on Ordinance 825 until after you've had a chance to meet with the board, reconsider the future of LHAB, and then inform the board in a more civilized manner. Thank you.
That is the last individual signed up to address council, at least on the sign-in sheet, but that doesn't preclude folks from coming to provide public comment tonight during the meeting. So if you'd like to do so, feel free to step up to the podium and provide your name and residence, and we'll certainly give you your 3 minutes. Seeing no other individuals wishing to participate in the public comment period tonight, I'll declare the public comment period closed. We'll now turn to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the city council study session of November 25th, 2024. B, approval of the minutes of the city council meeting of December 2nd, 2024. C, approval of the minutes of the city council special meeting of December 9th, 2024. D, approval of the minutes of the city council study session of December 9th, 2024. E, approval of claims vouchers in the amount of $4,468,613.69 for the period of November 16th, 2024 through December 13th, 2024. F, approval of payroll checks in the amount of $3,525,082.26 for the period of November 16th, 2024 through December 15th, 2024. G, motion number 2025-01, authorizing the award of a construction contract to Miles Resources LLC in the amount of $613,245 for the South Tacoma Way and 92nd Street South Traffic Signal Project. H, motion number 2025-02, confirming the appointment of Stephanie Marshall as the City of Lakewood Hearing Examiner Pro Tem and authorizing the execution of an agreement for hearings examiner services. I, motion number 2025-03, authorizing the execution of an amendment to the interlocal agreement with Pierce Transit for police services. J, motion number 2025-04, accepting a donation from Partners for Parks in the amount of $99,000 to support replacement of the dog park fence at Fort Steilacoom Park. K, items filed in the office of the city clerk. 1, American Lake Management District Advisory Committee meeting minutes of September 3rd, 2024. 2, Planning Commission meeting minutes of October 2nd, 2024. 3, Arts Commission meeting minutes of October 7th, 2024. 4, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting minutes of October 22nd, 2024. 5, Arts Commission meeting minutes of October 28th, 2024. 6, Lakewood's Promise Advisory Board meeting minutes of November 7th, 2024. 7, Arts Commission meeting minutes of November 4th, 2024. And 8, Arts Commission meeting minutes of November 8th, 2024.
Thank you very much. Is there any item on the consent agenda which a member of council wishes to remove from consideration at this time? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Been moved by council members Pearson, seconded by council member Boki, that we adopt the consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda has been adopted. We now turn to the regular agenda under ordinances. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 825, amending chapters 2.48020, 248.030, 248.035, and 248.036 relating to sunsetting the Landmarks and Heritage Advisory Board.
Thank you. And for this, again, just for an overview of process, we'll have our city attorney, Ms. Wachter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Heidi Wachter, City Attorney for the City of Lakewood. This is not the first time the council has moved to change a board or commission. We've previously had experience with Keep Lakewood Beautiful and the Sister Cities Association. This one is a little bit different, and you'll notice this when you look at the ordinance, in that in the past, sometimes you've taken the entire board and its body of work outside the city. In this instance, you're retaining the work and you're replacing where the work gets done through. And so what you'll see is that the repeal has to do with the actual board that's at play. It doesn't have to do with the work that that board was doing. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'm sure we have a few questions. I have one under section 1 of the proposed ordinance where the board is defined as meeting the Landmarks and Heritage Board with the strikeout and the insertion of Parks and Recreation. And remind me the thought process behind the work residing with the Parks Board as opposed to some other board like Planning Commission or
Yeah,
something.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, there's not a legal requirement that it go to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. What I would tell you is I believe that that is where the current rules about naming rights within the city lay. And the thought process is this seems like similar type of work. However, I am not in a position to share with you what I think the workloads of different departments are or how that's going to go. That would not be my area of expertise.
On the next page, maybe this is something you can help us with too, where when it comes to the designation of a building or a certificate of appropriateness, the written authorization, it would be issued by either the Parks Board or Planning and Public Works. So do you know what is involved in a certificate of appropriateness, just in general?
I would suspect, Mr. Mayor, and I'm edging a little bit towards some speculation here, but it does depend on what it is that you're designating. And I'll give you an example. Within the city of Lakewood, there are times when we put up a monument, even though there's not a building or something specific to look at, we want people to know what was there at one time. That doesn't require a lot of work by the Public Works Department. However, if you're talking about some type of a building or access to a building or something people are actually going to be using, I would expect that your city engineer is going to be involved somewhere along the way. So I think it really is designed to cast that broad net in anticipation of what types of things we're going to be designating potentially.
And from a work plan standpoint, who kind of sources the work or quote unquote keeps their eye on the historical ball, so to speak? maybe members, I guess, at large, all of us, I suppose, residents of the city of Lakewood could bring an issue to the Parks Board if this were to pass, and they would then do the work that was done for potential historical marker designation or historical building landmark designation. Would that be kind of functionally how it works?
Well, the city is always receptive to input from the public. That doesn't mean things go to the front of the line just because somebody from the public brings it up. But
Right.
in any number of ways, things come to the city. In terms of what the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board does, they do have their hand in a number of areas, and they're always prioritizing based on any number of factors, which may have to do with public interest. They may also have to do with resources, available grant money. All sorts of things are at play there.
Okay. Those are my questions. Mr. Boki.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Wachter, and you can phone a friend if I'm going to ask questions that have kind of come up tonight in public comment. And then I'm also looking at 107 of our packet. That's the actual code portion that we're striking. 9 members. How many members do we currently have on the committee?
On the Landmark Heritage Committee, I do not know the answer to that question. 3.
3.
I phoned a friend. The friend answered.
Okay. So we're supposed to have 9 members and we've got 3. And then it says at least 3 shall be professionals who have experience in identification, evaluation, and protection of historic resources and have been selected from among the fields of history, architecture, architectural history, historic preservation, planning, cultural anthropology, archaeology, and cultural geography, landscape architecture, American studies, law, or other historic preservation related disciplines. So is that the lens that we select everybody for? If I'm just a citizen, can I even be on this board? Could Paul Boki be on this board? And honestly, I like 2/4 of art history in college. Could I be on this board?
Well, Councilmember Boki and members of the council, I'm not going to opine on your suitability for any particular board. But what I will tell you is that you put out there what you're hoping for, right? And you're trying to be descriptive with the public as to what the interests of the board are. And you're hoping that the people who come forward understand that that's the interest. There's what you're aiming for and there's what you get, right? And so we're not going to super scrutinize people to see what grade they got in history in high school or college for their suitability on the board. A lot of times what it comes down to is a general interest and passion for the topic and commitment to the community. So that is what I would call aspirational. I don't believe that we have screened anyone off of the board on the basis of not meeting our bar for the committee.
Well, it sounds like that at least that the goal is at least 3.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's being reached, and basically all 3 people who are currently on the committee would have to, okay, so I'm trying to, the revolving door with staff. Do we know about that? Because as I recall, I know of at least 2 or 3 people who have staffed that committee, but I'm getting years mixed up and whatnot. So I think we need to.
Councilmember Boki and members of the council, the city takes the resources that are available. We take the priorities as we understand them to be, and we align those. When we have staffing changes, we effectively do handoffs to the degree that we can between staff members. The leadership of the city meets every week, the day after council meetings, and commits to where everything that was expressed at the council meeting fits into the priorities. And I believe that the city staff has done as effective a job as they can. I know that when we've tried to recruit for this, And a sincere effort has been made to post these positions, to ask people to announce them at their community clubs, to put the word out in whatever way we can. We still haven't gotten increasing amounts of interest in the particular committees, not just this one, but some others are difficult to staff as well. So I think there's always going to be a feeling from either side when you're at that position that the committee may be sunsetted, that somehow the support wasn't there, while the staff may be feeling like there were 3 members, we had trouble getting it to full numbers. And I don't know that it's appropriate to speculate on, whose fault is it that this is in the condition that it's in. It may actually just be a circumstance of where we're at in our history as a city.
And the proposal is to move this responsibility to the Parks Board.
Correct.
Okay.
That is what would happen if you passed this ordinance exactly as written. I would hearken you back to my comment that that's not a legal requirement,
Right.
that be the body that take this on.
Did we look at what other cities do? I mean, in Tacoma wouldn't be a good example because they have a historic preservation officer who has a tremendous amount of power. Other cities our size, do they even have an LHAB, or does it reside in another committee, or do they have or strong ones, or how do they go about it?
I did not look at what other cities do. I'm mostly operating from our own history with boards and commissions that we have sunsetted, and with some of the different permutations of this body of work. You may remember we went through a period where there was a little bit of hoopla about the interaction between our landmarks preservation and the federal rules about historic landmarks and some of those interactions, because this is unique in the different layers of requirements. And some of the concerns were that there would be a homeowner who, if their house got designated as a historic landmark, they would then be prohibited from doing certain things with that property. They didn't want someone declaring the house for them. There was some interest in having the owner drive that question. That's just one example of some of what we've been through, but we have gone through a lot of different questions with historic preservation just because it's kind of a hot issue in its own narrow little lane of federal regulation and state regulation.
Thank you, Ms. Walker.
Councilmember Pearson and then Councilmember Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If you want to.
Ms. Walker, do you have, so some of this work's going to go through Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Is that board fully staffed? Do they stay fully staffed? Is it difficult to get people on? I'm just wondering if maybe we increased, the numbers of people on that board and kind of brought a few folks from the historic, over, and we could they could still be involved in that in some fashion. And I still want to make sure we get the right people making, recommendations and providing input. And I know they have public comment and stuff, but it's.
I have a couple of answers for you on that. One is that the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, it is, in my opinion, robust. It has good participation. It has good enthusiastic members, people who have some expertise in the area, and definitely that passion for the community. Before I would just add on people from a different perspective, I would definitely consult with the department that is the driver with that, the Parks Department, and show some deference to that department head.
I could just add on, Councilmember Pearson, the staffing for the purpose of historic would still be the Planning and Public Works Department. So that wouldn't change. The board would change, but the staffing resource would still come from Planning and Public Works, because quite frankly, that's where the regulatory expertise exists.
And the other point that I was going to make, Councilmember Pearson, is with regard to people's ability to have input on particular issues. When you're talking about parks and recreation, that's a pretty big umbrella. You could spend a lot of time talking about turf for particular sports fields, which is not necessarily of interest to people who are there about the landmarks and heritage. Now, when you start talking about the H barn or something like that, you might have more interest from the historic folks. It's possible that rather than just growing your committee, you may want to look at avenues for good input, not just a public hearing, but maybe a deep dive, have people with expertise or passion for a particular area attendant at certain meetings rather than fully in the board. So I guess my point is there's a lot of ways to try and make sure that happens. And I would be deferential to the people who have been successful with that board or commission, because that one is a pretty strong one.
Yeah, thank you. And that's kind of what I was getting at is I still want to make sure we get the right people talking about the right topics and things like that. And whether, somehow getting them involved with PRAB as a subcommittee of historical things or whatever, that makes sense. But if it doesn't, if we're not holding a lot of meetings and it's, not super productive, parts of the year, I'd be interested to seeing what other options are out there, so.
Councilmember Brandstetter.
Ms. Walker, the ordinance that we're considering deals with amending 4 chapters of the municipal code. 2.48, 020, 030, 035, and 036. That the ordinance, in fact, completely eliminates 030, 035, and 036. And the remaining section is merely definitions. If we adopt this, what are those definitions within the code actually applying to?
Councilmember Brandstetter and members of the council, if you look at your code, it actually is a chapter not specific to a board or commission, and that's what I opened my comments with. It has to do with actual landmarks preservation. So if you look at the chapter as a whole, those definitions would then apply to whoever's doing that landmarks and heritage work. It wouldn't necessarily be the Landmarks and Heritage Advisory Board. And so that made this one a little different than some of the others. You may be diving down into that specific because the definitions are within that one chapter, but they would go on to the fuller chapter about the landmarks preservation.
So there would be remaining sections within chapter 2-48 to which the definitions are applicable.
Yes, my position is yes, we still are going to have a landmarks program. It simply is not going to be directed in the way that it had been by a Landmarks Heritage Advisory Board. It would then be directed by the Parks Board and or the Public Works Department.
Anyone else? Councilmember Bell? No, you're good? Okay. Councilmember Laura.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Wachter. As the city council liaison to this board, I'm aware of at least one session that was canceled due to staff turnover because it was unsupported, and at least 2 times when there were challenges getting a Zoom meeting up and running. Do you know if that has been discussed or addressed as a issue to not have happen in the future if this were to continue?
Councilmember Laura Sella and members of the council, we have ongoing efforts within the city to communicate the need to properly notice these meetings and to have them available via Zoom and in other ways. And there have been issues off and on because they're staffed by different people, but we are very on top of that. I can tell you there's another board or commission that had to move a meeting because of the Zoom accessibility. And it's very frustrating, but the understanding is that even if there's no one out there watching, we want it to be available for people to access in that way.
Okay,
So.
thank you. It was also a little off-putting to hear that the chair and vice chair were not aware that this was being proposed to be sunset. Do you know if we had established outreach with a way to inform them or to provide or feedback from them other than coming to public comment tonight?
I do not know what the discussions were in advance of this. What I can tell you is that this has been a topic of discussion at city council meetings, which is publicly accessible. It does beg the question, though, it would be inappropriate for me to say it's their job to follow along and catch up with that. And to the degree that we didn't reach out, there will be a follow-up discussion about how to properly reach out. I can tell you again, since this is not the first time we've gone through this type of exercise with the Board or Commission, I don't know that it's ever been happily received. But it's, it's still, there's no harm in reaching out an extra time, right?
Sure,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And if we were to postpone a decision on this for, say, 3 months, would that be enough time to determine if there was an appetite to sort of resuscitate this board and get things moving?
I hesitate, Councilmember Laricella, because what I'm going to say is tainted with my perspective on this. And it's the same thing that happened with the Keep Lakewood Beautiful Board. There was, and the sister cities, there was the sentiment that at some point there was a disproportionate city lift on those boards compared to the actual citizen lift. And we have the capacity to staff the robust boards where there's lots of involvement, engagement, activity. It is much more challenging for us to actually carry a board or commission. And I don't know that we would be carrying the Landmarks and Heritage Advisory Board. Don't take me as saying that. Just take me as saying, if the citizen effort isn't there, we could be here in 3 months, once again, hearing that we hadn't done enough as compared to the citizen effort on the other side of it. That's completely my own statement. I do not ascribe it to the city of Lakewood's position on this. That is not something that was discussed before I came up here tonight.
Okay, thank you. And I value your opinion too.
Thank you. Follow-up, Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm generally for sunsetting this. I think that what I would like to see is some sort of a steering committee or something for historical issues on PRAB that, a couple times a year, the steering committee meets on specific items and hammers those out and kind of includes that in PRAB's work plan to keep those folks engaged and involved. I don't want to sunset it without any sort of kind of plan to keep those people that are interested involved. So.
In just a reminder, Council, we don't have a motion on the floor yet, so we have a little bit of opportunity for discussion, but those are questions for Ms. Walker. Councilmember Bill. Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Well, certainly.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So I just wondered if you had any more information on what the efforts have been done for recruitment to get, not just on this board, just recruitment in general that we have done, that the city has done for all of our boards and commissions.
That comes out of my department and it comes through the city clerk. And what we do is we make an effort to have those members of the city organization who are involved in the Rotary, the Kiwanis, all of those, take those announcements out to their respective organizations, spread the word throughout the city organization and to anyone we know. So lots of word of mouth. There is communication with our communications manager to put it out there as is deemed the best way to reach those groups. We sometimes talk to the groups themselves and ask them who else is out there. If we find out that there's a lead, somebody says something's good for this position, we personally reach out to that person and encourage them to apply. That's the stuff that I'm aware of. It's probably on the website as well, but I think there's been a lot of hands-on personal contact being attempted. And when we don't see a lot of applications coming in, the word goes through the organization, hey, I'm not getting a lot of interest in this. What else can we do? We don't just say, oh, nobody applied and walk away from it. There's always a bit of follow-up to that.
So you feel like there's been a really good effort put out for recruitment, like you named a lot of different ways that we have got the word out, basically.
I do believe the effort on not just this, but like when we're nominating people for awards in the community, all of that stuff, that's one of the pieces of the city that I think works particularly well, is I think we're doing a good job of that kind of outreach and trying to get the citizens involved in.
Do you happen to know how many people applied for the last round of, of LHAB openings?
I'm looking at the city clerk because she can probably tell you.
We've had an open recruitment for LHAB for the last couple of years. Every application that has been received has been reviewed by the mayor and I believe at this point they were recommended for appointment. So those who are currently on the board were the only applications that the city has received.
So there hasn't been any current applications, or we don't have
No.
recently? Okay.
No, there's not, we don't cache them and then say, okay, we're going to look at these in March. It's
Right.
been open because it's taken open and rolling appointment in order to just have the 3 that we have.
I just had one final question on some of the factual foundation for the challenges with membership. As I recall, when we appointed one person a couple of years ago, there was a little bit of a challenge initially to that person's participation. They voiced some concern about that and wanted to participate, and they were allowed to. But I don't sense that they have had much participation on the board, which has reduced the numbers down to a couple, 2 or 3 that have actually been relatively active participants. Do you have any sort of anecdotal information about the other members, former, in the past, say, 3-4 years?
No anecdotal information on that, just what the city clerk has shared about. Right now, we're basically appointing whoever applies.
Right, and I have done that.
That's where we're
I
at.
have forwarded those.
Right.
I certainly, it's been my practice since I've been in this role to typically interview folks. As a matter of course, unless they are repeat applicants, they've served well. Sometimes I don't interview them if I've interviewed them initially before reappointment, but everyone who's made an application for an appointment to a board, I've interviewed. And in this case, all the ones who submitted applications I've appointed, and the council has confirmed to date that I'm aware of. So. Okay, if there are no further questions for Ms. Wachter on where we are with this, I still, for purposes of whatever action the council wishes to take, I need to have a motion on the floor. So do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 825?
Mr. Mayor, I move the adoption of ordinance 825.
Second that.
It's been moved by Councilmember Brandstetter, seconded by Councilmember Bell, that we adopt ordinance number 825. Further discussion? Mr. Brandstetter.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I think that while the title of this ordinance has to do with the sunsetting the Landmarks and Heritage Advisory Board, that it is the real discussion that we really need to have and the real goal we need to have, is there a healthy environment in the city to both preserve and have respect for, and in fact, learn from and remember the heritage in the city. And that includes landmarks and it includes other elements of history to be able to go forward in doing that. So that, in my view, the discussion is not whether we need this board for that to happen. And my assessment is that currently the multiple efforts that are being made and brought to fruition to both identify and retain and educate the community about our history and heritage are actually quite healthy. I see that as somewhat akin to, if I go back to 15 years of where I would have described the appreciation for art was not healthy in the city, and it has become so. But in this particular case, if we were right now look at the landscape regarding heritage, okay, and landmarks, that we have a great many groups in the city that are engaged in aspects of that effectively. You know, in terms of recruiting folks, you know, we just today, this evening, we received a presentation from Partners for Parks that are taking a historical preservation and not just to preserve the building, but their plan for within the building to build an understanding of the heritage and that's there. The city, not through this board, but through the city, has done a good deal of work with the Nisqually Indian tribe. That is, but that has been rendered in both events, in future projects, and things to work together that are both the things that have happened and that things will happen that goes on. And there, each of those they are going on. That if we look at going on, that Grave Concerns is an agency, a nonprofit within the city that is actively engaged, and they have a narrow focus, but they are very effective in working. And we support them with their work with the cemetery, or the former Western States hospital patients that's going there. We have separately with other feelings been working with the historic Fort Steilacoom organization and thus with DSHS and others to reserve a major historical resource and element of the city that's going on. And that work is moving forward effectively, being able to go and do that. And we as a city council are engaged with and will be engaged with our legislative folks and with the city folks and looking to be able to go and do that. And there are other examples of that go on, and they sometimes they involve the city manager sometimes manages which city department is the best department to deal with a particular project. We have allocated funds to some of these organizations when they have had something that they have needed. And so the question in my mind really is, do we need a board? We have a program that a property owner can apply to have a property be designated with a city level historical designation. And the board has sort of been the mechanism where those few and far between applications come in that we've had do some things, but that's not necessarily what needs to be happen. And in fact, I would venture to say that I don't think that in their annual reports to us by the board, they've expressed frustration in that they can't convince property owners to apply. Well, that's not convincing people to apply is not the case. And before I was on the council, but in the early years of the city, there was a period of time when the city allowed your neighbor to apply to designate your property. Okay, and they got that fixed, but you didn't have to be the property owner, somebody else could do that. So we found that, but the ability for someone, a group or an individual or someone that is the owner of something that they deem historical and they would like to be able to get that designation for whatever reasons, and there are levels you can do that to the city, but you could do it at the state or you could do it federally. And at some of the higher levels, there are actually some financial advantages of doing like that. One advantage that I see primarily of getting a city designation of then when you're applying for grants to do some rehabilitation or something, you can do that. But this ordinance isn't going to take away that program to be able to go and do that. It's just a question of, do we need a board to do that? But more importantly, do we need a board to energize the city in the area of historic preservation? And the answer that I see in reality is no, that it's out there. In terms of recruiting people to the board, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've talked with quite a few people about serving on this board. People ask me, what can I serve on? And I talk about what it. And when I particularly talk about people who are interested in history in terms of being able to go and do that, they are more interested in being and working with the Lakewood Historical Society, or they're more interested in working with the Historic Port Steilacoom Society or with grave concerns, because there's a focus there and there's some results there. And that will remain if we just do away with the board. Now, my other thought is, I don't think the major thing that we kind of can't handle off over that is we got to figure out is who's going to handle if I decide that I want my property to be designated as a historical property because once upon a time a city council person lived there. Okay, to be able to go and do that, but or for whatever reason someone would want to do that. But, that's almost like a land use issue. The person applies, you have to have somebody who goes through and does some diligence to see that if it's appropriate, and if it is, the council or the appropriate city department can approve it. So I am opposed to just trying to replace the work of this board with the Parks Board, because I don't think the Parks Board is engaged with some of those historical things that I mentioned, but not with all of them. Okay. And if we were to go forward to do that. So, my thought is that the work of looking at coordinating all kinds of efforts regarding historical preservation, whether it's from creating murals or programs or awarding some funds to someone that wants to do something that's going to advance this, to go on, does not need us to have a board that does that. And I hesitate to put it on to the Parks and Recreation Board. We as a council have ask the Parks and Recreation Board to do a robust body of work in the near term. With trying to create city parks, trying to get implement a master plan at Edgewater Park to actually begin to be serious about developing lake ends, as well as keeping a really robust recreation program, cost-free activities for people in the city. So that, in that regard, I would propose an amendment to the ordinance. And I would move to, in section 1, that I would delete the definition of board. And in other places where the term board is used in the definitions, okay, and elsewhere in appropriate sections of the city code, substitute Planning and Public Works Department for the term board. That I think that would set the table for the city manager to be able to do this and manage this work that we want to, and it's in our vision for the community to be able to go and do that. So again, that my motion is to delete in section 1 the definition of board, and elsewhere where the term board is used, substitute Planning and Public Works Department.
Thank you, Mr. Brandstetter. Is there a second to the proposed amendment as articulated by Mr. Brandstetter? Been seconded by Councilmember Laura Sella. Is there further discussion on the proposed amendment as articulated, which effectively amends section 1, deleting the definition of board and otherwise replacing Parks and Recreation Advisory Board with Planning and Public Works? Mr. Brandstetter.
I would just comment that the impact of the amendment would in fact actually be to focus this work for anyone in the city that is interested in doing an element of this. In that department where the department director can indicate who is a responsible person, whereas right now it's not real clear. So it would be clearer and more transparent to the public to do that. Additionally, you know, in the area of transparency, this department really has a good system of creating transparency, and particularly around things that need public comment. They do hold in a variety of realms. The department actually holds public hearings. They regularly pronounce when there's an action that requires it, a public comment period, being able to go and do that. So that this fits neatly within their systems of where there are the application type issues to do. But beyond that, it allows the city manager to have someone with a good idea in the realm of preserving history and heritage, for the city manager to direct the appropriate staff to work with the person bringing it forward. And that will keep some kind of, because we have good momentum going on in terms of people doing things to preserve history and being able to go and do that. And I guess I'll just make one more comment about really trying to deal with having a board and trying to staff it and being able to go forward, is that I'm really confident on this board and all others. You know, I regularly see when they are published by the city clerk, the notices about vacancies on the board to be able to go and do that. You know, I accept that as a council member, trying to help in that recruitment and talking to people is something to do that I am sure the rest of you do, is that when we're aware that there is someone or that we find someone, because most of us have come to our positions on the council after having served in some sort of advisory position that's going on, and many of us got to those advisory positions because someone else encouraged us to do that. But in my case, you know, when I was able to do that, I was also able to find an advisory role on a committee my evaluation was it was going to do meaningful work. I think that's part of the problem with this board, that the meaningful work is done at a level below that. Okay. And we heard in our discussions, because we did have a discussion about this issue. You know, I'm surprised by the public comments of saying that this came out of nowhere, because on November 25th, we as a council had an issue about and discuss has this board remained relevant, and is it still going on, and is it going off? And, you know, and we had that. Now, I will tell you that it wasn't on an agenda. It was a study session, and it wasn't on the agenda as an action item. But it was an item that was clearly identified as under the comments of the city manager. And we spent probably 15 minutes discussing it on that particular day, being able to go to do that. So, you know, and I'm a little bit surprised about the thoughts from some that were in public comment that said that this came out of nowhere. Because that's certainly not my impression in terms of being able to go and do that. But I'd urge, I'd urge, you know, the thought was keep all the works, keep some people in the city, ourselves and staff, open to initiatives that are going to promote and it will continue to promote, as we have been, the history and heritage type things, even to create markets and fund good ideas. Okay, to be able to go and do that, and that we can do that if we entrust the Planning and Public Works Department director to organize that work to be done on our behalf, and keep us informed.
Great. Any further comments on the proposed amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the proposed amendment to ordinance 825 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The proposed amendment to ordinance number 825 passes. We now turn to ordinance number 825 as amended. Any further discussion? Councilmember Lauricella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have some general comments, not proposing any changes. But we clearly have two members of the board that exist today that are passionate about what we're doing in the city, that have contributed to projects. And I don't want to lose that passion and that engagement that we have with those people. That said, it's clear that we have not had an appetite in our city of folks who want to be part of this going forward, in that there it'd be up to 9 folks on this board, and we've had trouble getting more than 3. Because of that, I think, well, the work is important and it can be transitioned to another place within the city. I think it's upon our city staff to remain engaged with those people who are passionate about this work. And if we can do that, then I'm in favor of this as proposed. Thank you.
Very good. Any further discussion? Otherwise, I'll put in my 2 cents or 3 cents worth. I'm going to support proposed ordinance 825 as amended, and dovetailing on the comments made by my fellow council members tonight. Here are my thoughts. I agree that the work that has been done to date by the Landmark and Heritage Advisory Board has certainly been very helpful in the city's early years as a young city. And through their efforts, we've designated any number of historical monuments around the city. They've made some designations of historical roads and byways throughout the city, which has been very helpful. And, you know, they have worked on certain tour guides. I think they've put together the nitty-gritty Grit City guide to some historical markers and monuments. And having that passion, the tours, and having that passion certainly, I think, helped not just perhaps form, but substantiate the work of the Lakewood Historical Museum. And certainly the Historic Fort Steilacoom Association. So the work, I think, has been good, and I hope has been rewarding for those who participated in the work, because their efforts did bring forth some great things for the city. But in light of that, I don't want, as some commenters may have suggested tonight, anyone to think that this council's decision to perhaps alter or sunset this board by placing the good work under the rubric of another board, if you will, or city department, to retain that essential work is turning our back on historic preservation or Lakewood's history, which is, in my opinion, far from the course. As Mr. Brandstetter indicated, we have done a lot of good work in addition to the work that I just mentioned by LHAB. You know, for instance, recently we've allocated and funded as a matter of policy a couple $100,000 thereabouts to preserve history in the form of the Tensler log, by not only working with the library district to move it to historic Fort Steilacoom Park, but to house it in a significantly structurally sound exhibition structure, if you will, that will be preserving that log for future generations with snippets of history embedded in the log before it's sealed. I think that's the plan. We've also supported the History Museum and the Historic Fort Steilacoom Association with lodging tax funds to a significant degree, not just this year, but for many years. We have significantly funded with lodging tax dollars Lakewood Gardens, which is a historic gem in this city, one that draws and attracts folks from around the region. We have engaged with Partners for Parks on any number of historic structures and historic areas in the city, including Fort Steilacoom Park. And as we heard tonight, the H-Barn project. As Mr. Brandstetter indicated, we are coordinating and participating with the Nisqually tribe on matters of cultural and historic significance at the park. We are working to obtain ownership of the historic houses at Western State Hospital for purposes of preserving significant and enduring history here in the city of Lakewood. So the work marches on. It may be placed and performed by others within the city and city departments, but it is work that we embrace, work that we value, and work that will continue. I don't want that impression to be left by any commenter to the contrary. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of ordinance number 825 as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ordinance 825 as amended has passed. We now turn to resolutions. Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2025-01, amending the city council rules of procedure.
For this, we'll call on Ms. Wachter again to give us a bit of overview and to articulate the proposed change to the council rules of procedure.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Heidi Wachter, City Attorney. As I've previously briefed you, this is completely within the authority of the council, what you want to do. So what I've presented is an option that would reduce the number of meetings per month to 3 from 4. And the way that it would work is the regular meeting would be at 7, the regular study session would be at 7, and then the third Monday would start at 6 with a meeting followed by a study session. That's obviously not the only answer to this. The answer is within you, the council. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wachter. Any questions for Ms. Wachter? I think she, or the department rather, captured the consensus suggestions from the study session last time. And I know that this is an issue that is not necessarily favored by 100% of us, but that's okay. So I will ask, in the absence of any further questions or clarification of Ms. Wachter, that we have a motion to adopt resolution 2025-01.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Bell, seconded by Councilmember Pearson, that we adopt resolution 2025-01. Now, certainly we're open for discussion. Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple brief comments, really. I think my biggest concerns in changing a schedule is, can we still accomplish the same volume of work, the same quality of work, still reach our goals? And I think that the answer is yes. There's some different things that we can do. The city manager can do to, kind of tighten up some of the meetings a little bit here and there and cut down on a little bit of time. We're still going to hold the same amount of public comments. Those were some of the kind of bigger things that stood out that I still wanted to maintain. And I think that this revised schedule, it does a good job of doing that. And it also, I recognize that there's desserts in the driveway and there's, these other, neighborhood association meetings and coffee with the mayor and these things that people are getting involved in and engaged in. I think that it's actually better to kind of cast a broader net of different ways to reach out to people rather than, show up on Monday at 7, be there, be square, or, you're not going to get your comments in and we're not going to talk to you and things like that. So, while we may be cutting down on our meetings here at City Hall, I think that, largely we're probably going to be out in the community more throughout the year. And certainly, for me with little kids and things that, it's nice to be able to help balance going to other events, not just the meetings, and I have, kids stuff here and there and stuff. So it kind of affords me some more options that doesn't, put the strain on the home life, so to speak. So I'm in favor of the ordinance as written. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Lauricella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will echo what Councilmember Pearson said. And for me, a big priority of my role here is being able to engage with people where they are, right? And we have meetings here currently 4 times a month. Reducing it to 3 times a month allows us to then get out in the communities and engage with folks outside of the rigid structure that we have here, which I think may be a way to be more approachable to our residents and being able to engage with them. So I too am in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. Echoing, yes, what my fellow council members have already said. It's very important that we do meet people where they're at. So I do like that this gives us an opportunity, but it also to expand things that we're doing, like Councilmember Pearson mentioned, but I do also like the fact that it kind of, we are still keeping our public comment, so that's not changing. So I just want to make sure that people know that, but we're trying to find other opportunities to get people engaged. Because currently there's a couple people online watching, and that's probably us also, but currently council chambers is empty. And so that is something that I think I would like to be more, have, the community more involved, ask questions, and for us to be more interactive with them. So I hope that this gives us a better opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Brandstetter.
Mr. Mayor, I have to say that I remain very opposed to doing this because we're doing it for no good reason. The last whereas in the resolution says that this is in order to promote efficiency in the legislative process and in keeping with more standard municipal legislative processes, a change to the meeting schedule is proposed. I don't think that we've made that case. Okay, the vague language of more standard municipal legislative processes is, I think, not necessarily something that is there or that is where we're going. That in the request for council action in an effort to try to establish some reasons why or to identify something that's broken, the discussion says that our council meeting schedule is heavy compared to other cities and towns in Pierce County, as well as other cities of similar size. That's generally true, but I would also ask us to recognize that we have a reputation of doing an extremely good job for our community as a council. And to some point, I get comments about that as not to oppose of some councils that meet less frequently, discuss things less thoroughly, and in fact are comprised of people who show up just to vote. We are far more engaged as a council with our community in multiple ways, not just through our council meetings to do that. But one of the ways that we're involved is that we are visibly and thankfully, we discuss a lot of things that come before the council. I think that in more detail than in many municipalities to be able to go and do that. So the idea of saying, well, we just align how many times we meet with other municipalities or the majority of municipalities, we should not be aspiring to a standard of the lowest common denominator. And that's what that is. We're just saying the lowest common denominator is that people only meet 2 or 3 times. So let's us start to do that. And that we'll do just as good a job. Maybe, but certainly there is no case made that we'll do a better job for our community by meeting less often, spending less time, and looking more thoroughly at issues. Then the discussion goes on and it says, one concern is whether this frequency of meetings discourages individuals from service on the city council. Over the years, I've talked with a lot of people encouraging them to run for the city council. I've heard from folks who I thought might be potential council members that they weren't ready to invest the amount of time that it would take. To be honest, more often I hear from people who tell me, I'm not going to do it, is I don't want to sit on that dais and listen to what people talk at you and in the way that they talk at you. But for us to sort of say, we think this is a panacea to get people to be on the council, you know, that's an easy reason for people to tell me, no, they don't want to run. Okay, to really be honest, and it's also disingenuous for me to say, oh, now you can run because we're going to only meet 3 times. The truth of it is none of us our time spent doing this is not solely spent on the 4 meetings that we do a month. You know, I have multiple other meetings that I go to of different things, both regionally and internal to the city and in the community. And we create occasions such as we're creating on January 11th. Okay, that we've done with the desserts in the driveway program, and the mayor's meetings. We create opportunities to that. So the impact about I can't really say to someone, you'll spend 25% less time, so you should run for the council, and that's the just voicing the argument that you thought it was too much time to be able to go and do that. And then the last sort of item in the discussion that talks about it says, we do things at our meetings that aren't really necessary. And that not being necessary has been not with a lot of actual anecdotal examples, but of saying that we spend time about particularly getting presentations or discussing about things that we're not really subject to have to make legislative action on. For instance, for example, when as we went through the period of time when the library was closing, you know, we had several times of where we had folks from the library come and update us on efforts and milestones doing that, in full knowledge that we had no role in that, but that what we did have a role in, that we were looking at it and that we were asking the questions that the community wanted to ask, and we were doing it in a public, transparent way, and that so that while we were hearing the presentation, people sitting out there were hearing the presentation, people who were sitting out there virtually were hearing the presentation, and people after the fact were going to the YouTube channel and hearing the presentation, and the fact and that information was getting out in the community, and we were facilitating that to be able to do that in a way that just wouldn't have happened. Okay. If it wasn't being done here. And we similarly got the fire district coming most recently and explaining to us their new proposal for how to fund the fire department with a fire charge instead of a property tax. And we have had utility companies come and just tell us these are changes that are coming into the utility networks in the city, even though that was not something we were going to deal with legislatively for either water or electricity or natural gas or even going on. That we have had presentations from conservation groups that have come to sort of educate us about what we're doing. We had a number of years ago, the folks from the United Way came and told us about, you know, what it is over there. And all that information is good to us because it gives us a good holistic view of the community, okay, and of the things that are out there. And also, as I have learned on the council, is the community doesn't fully appreciate what we can and what we can't do, but they do expect us to be informed when they ask. and be able to go and do that. So you know, so I think that the case is not being made for greater efficiency. the case is not being made for, there is some prescribed best practices for cities to do that in terms of what they call municipal legislative processes that argue that we should make this change. It's change for the sake of change, and we run the risk of the simplest explanation of why we make the change is that there was some personal advantages to us to meeting less. I don't think, I don't necessarily think that I would ascribe that to any one of my colleagues, but I am expecting that would be an assumption that's going to be out there in the community. That being said, I would just suggest that if this is approved today, that we commit to, in 6 months, reviewing to see are there any unintended consequences or benefits that we've come to realize to be able to go and do that. Essentially, I'm saying I'm going to vote no, but if we try it, I'd like to just keep our eye on what difference is it making. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Brandstetter. Any other comments? Well, I will just provide my appreciation for Mr. Branstetter's comments and his steadfast commitment to the work, which is, as we all know, what has, I think, distinguished this council from many others in the region, that we, I think, fully and faithfully engage in the work, regardless of the time that it takes. We engage in the work. And so my opinion is the work will always dictate the need for time, and we can always call a special meeting, assuming this passes. We can always call a special meeting or set an extra study session because that is our purview as a council to do. We are always able to amend our own council rules of procedure really at any time. So if after 6 months we find that this experiment was a horrible, miserable failure, there's nothing that keeps us from changing our council rules or procedure any way we see fit. So thank you all for the comments. In the absence of any further comments, I will actually call the motion. All those in favor of the motion to adopt resolution 2025-01, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Resolution 2025-01 has been adopted. Mr. Caulfield, do we have any unfinished or new business?
Not this evening, Mayor.
So I'll turn to reports by the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. First of all, belated Happy New Year to y'all. And I'd like to first call upon our Deputy City Manager, Todd Kraus, to just give you a quick overview of our third quarter financial report, which I know is also included in your packet this evening. Ms. Kraus?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As the city manager stated, this is the quarterly financial report. I don't have a lengthy presentation. There's about 147 pages in your packet. So I thought I would just turn over to the general and street fund. And that is on page 133 of your packet. And this is through the third quarter. I don't have a whole lot of updates for fourth quarter yet. A lot of our revenues come in quite a bit later than what you would normally expect for a quarterly report. So compared to the year-to-date budget for third quarter, our revenues are up by 980,000 or 2.5%. And compared to 2023 year-to-date actual, we're up 2.6 million or 7%. On the operating expenditure side, operating expenditures have increased substantially from 2023 and compared to 2023 year to date, it's up 3.2 million. And compared to the year-to-date budget, it is over by 384,000 or 1.1%. I provided on the following page, 134, some explanations of what those variances are for each of those departments that have substantial changes. So the other thing that I did was took a look at where we were. So on the revenue side, we're looking pretty good. We have some revenues that have consistently been down and some that have been up. And just for the revenues that I could tell now, today, which again doesn't include all of October or November or December, we'll be looking about the same in terms of operating revenues, slightly under. I'm anticipating that property tax will come in at whatever the 1% that is authorized in any of the delinquent amounts that we collect in this year. Our sales tax through October is doing pretty good. It's over by 284,000. Sales tax for parks and criminal justice sales tax are pretty good compared to October, year-to-date October. Admissions tax is doing better at about $44,000 better through November. Our utility tax through November preliminary, these are all preliminary numbers because we haven't received all of the revenues, but continues to be lower than anticipated. Gambling tax has been down and continues through year-to-date November. Too early to see what our franchise fees are, but the biggest revenue increase that you're seeing here and will continue to be is the development services permits, which is by year end is anticipated to be about $670,000 over compared to the budget. Our licenses and permits through September, I don't really have completely updated numbers for those. And it's too early to tell for state shared revenues. But the bottom line is we're looking at about 790,000 over the budget for the revenue side. On the expenditure side, even though that you're seeing some departments that are exceeding the budget, overall, we will stay within our allotted budget. Some departments will have savings that other departments will use. But at the end of the day, as you know, the city manager has stated, and it's been quite some time that he's held the line on discretionary spending, that will also continue into 25 and 26. So we'll still have to be careful on our spending. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Kraus? Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Kraus, I just have a question about one line on the spreadsheet on page 133. And down in towards the bottom under the ending fund balance category, there's a line that says ending fund balance as a % of operating revenue. And I'm trying to understand in the 2024 section, it says the revised budget that the ending fund balance will be 13.1%. But the year to date is 37.8%. And is that an indicator that you expect that there's going to be a significant change in the fourth quarter that's going to drive us down to that 13% ending the year with an ending fund balance that's because it's usually been in the high 20s and when we've ended a year.
I am anticipating that we will be greater than the revised budget. And the reason for that is because there will be expenditures or budgets that won't be spent and they'll be carried over. So we'll have a higher ending balance, but when I come back with the carry forward budget adjustment, what you'll see is the year-end financial report, and then you'll also see what the carry forward is, and then what the actual ending balance would be for the revised budget, taking into consideration of any unspent monies. that will need to be carried over.
So on that particular line, when it talks about ending fund balance as a percent of operating revenues, and then it says it has a revised budget column, do we actually pass a budget with that number in it? Or is that just a running calculation of what's going on? But why is it it's more than 20% different than the year-to-date actual of the same figure.
The year-to-date actual and the year-to-date budget will always be a little bit different because the year-to-date budget is looking only at 9 months of anticipated revenue, whereas the revised budget is the total revenues for the 12 months. And then the actual is just the actual activity. So there always will be some differences.
And so why is the annual number, if that's what the revised budget is, lower than the year-to-date actual? Is that because we just got a lot of money we haven't spent yet, and we're gonna spend it in the fourth quarter to drive that number, those numbers closer together?
I will look deeper into this. I'll have to look at my formulas in there.
Okay,
Yeah, but you're
I merely asked, not because I think the numbers are wrong, I'm just trying to get my head around what they're trying to say to me.
Yeah, and City Council, you're correct that you don't actually approve an ending fund balance. It's based on your financial policies that says how much we need to have in ending fund balance reserves.
Which is the 12%, and this reflects 13.1, for instance, so in excess of the policy of 12%. That's the way I read it. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is
Okay.
accurate. Yes.
Anything? Does that prompt a question, Mr. Branstetter?
Well, I understand that our target for reserves is 12%.
Correct.
But ending fund balance generally also includes more than just the reserves, because it's the float, if you will, of how we're going to pay people going forward and being able to go and do that. So, and it historically has been in past reports, it's been close to 30. Okay, you know, the 12% of that ending fund balance is in reserves, and I understand that, and that it's actually been a little bit higher because the 12% doesn't include the 2 million that we had in the Economic Development Fund. So this is just the lowest number I've seen in quite some time, and it's lower by more than half of what I'm used to seeing. But it's the third quarter report, so it's already ancient history. So we'll wait for the annual report and see what it looks like.
Ms. Kraus.
Yes, so to answer your question, Mayor, your statement, it's 12%, but because there is an undesignated, so we've exceeded the 12%, we have 567,000 extra in the revised budget that will be used for future budgets, and that's how it comes up to the 13.1. Same with the year-to-date budget and the year-to-date actual. We do have a higher amount because some of those the year-to-date budget hasn't been spent. And so, or there's more revenues coming in than anticipated, and that's why you're seeing a higher ending fund balance as a percentage of revenue. But again, those monies will be spent for future budgets, so like for 25 and 26, as well as any carry forward budget adjustments should the City Council approve those requests.
Great, thank you. Mr. Boki.
So I'll before I ask my questions, I think even though I think all your property taxes have been counted, is that pretty much because usually they come in October, but for whatever reason,
yeah,
it looks like all our property taxes are counted. So a big chunk of revenues are that number's not going to change much.
It will change some. So if you look back in October of 23 and 24, in each of those, or 22 and 23, we received about 450,000 average. So
Okay.
we'll still get money in the third quarter or fourth quarter.
Okay, I'm a little thrown because the money usually doesn't come until the end of October, right? Or is it the, okay,
It's the way that the city had it set up, and there's some benefit to it from financial reporting perspective. But starting off from the very beginning when I got here, they've accrued it back to September. So to make a change will have some impact over the overall financial. So I left it as is.
okay. Yeah, I think that's the big reason there because it's not millions that will be coming in, it's hundreds of thousands. And so we've kind of counted almost all our property tax, so we'll probably run deficit in the last quarter because of that, I imagine. So I want to ask a couple questions about we're hitting our mark on the REIT from the standpoint that I guess we're hitting when I look at it, we've got revenues are okay as a percentage of budget. So maybe it answers my question, but the question is that as of 9/30, we only had $589,000 in the REIT fund. We're going into a slower season for real estate, actually really the next 6 months, right? So do we have enough in there to meet our needs going forward?
Yes, and actually, I just sent the city manager an update for a real estate excise tax through November. And through November, so our budget is 2,353,000. And the actuals through, and these are all preliminary, I received the numbers, but until it actually hits our bank account, that's what I would rely on. We've already exceeded our annual budget by about 14,000, and there's still one more month left. So we'll meet our budgeted amount and have a little bit extra.
So we're in good shape there. So then I'm just going to ask a question. The utility taxes and the franchise fee based on revenues, and I'm understanding that people are cord cutting, so cable doesn't do much. But what is the problem that you're seeing or that we're hearing in regards to electricity and gas and some of the other ones? Some of them are going up, and I don't have it in front of me. But I mean, we're told by TP, I mean, electric prices go up every year. Gas prices seem to go up every year. They're going to go up a lot this coming year.
So I think for the utility taxes as it relates to electricity and natural gas, it's going to be weather dependent, for sure is one, but then also prioritization too. You know, we've seen like during the recession, some people will, not spend as much on utility tax, where before electricity and natural gas prior to the Great Recession, it was pretty steady. You would anticipate some increases because the cost increases. But when things kind of got tougher, people did prioritize and cut back in some areas.
Okay. I think that's it for me. We'll just wait till year end and see how it all washes out. We're hanging in there though. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boki. Never like to hear the word wash out when it comes to budgeting, but I get the point. So yeah, washed up. We're actually doing quite well, thanks to you and your team, Ms. Kraus, Mr. Caulfield. There are other cities around the area that would probably very much appreciate having the financial picture that we have. So we have to consider and count ourselves to be doing pretty well. Good stewards. I think that's it. Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Mr. Caulfield?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few other updates. Next week, we'll be coming forward to you as part of your study session to review a proposed O&M agreement with WashDOT for the city to take on some ongoing maintenance issues with the new shared use paths that the state is going to be building, connecting Tillicum, Woodbrook neighborhoods to Lakewood proper, if you will. And by the way, the reason that we're proposing that is because a lot of those underlying maintenance issues, the city, whether it's replacing a light bulb or cleaning up graffiti or litter or something, is something that we can do a whole lot quicker than the state. And really it's just about being proactive and making sure that it is safe and secure and looking good. Did want to point out to you that this project, that shared use path, is stage 4 of 5 within the I-5 JBLM corridor project. And this is the last phase that is actually not yet under construction. WashDOT does expect to bid it in the January, February timeframe. Though, while we're not hearing anything, I just wanted to caution that, we have a new governor, we have new state legislators. I understand the state is having some significant financial pains, and just based on past practice, sometimes the state legislature and or the governors put a pause or even move projects around. So we are not hearing any of that, but I just wanted to just kind of give you a warning order that could happen. Now, if in fact that does happen, we of course will be very proactive in working with our delegation to, ensure that this project does move forward. There's been a lot of planning and coordination with a number of property owners in that area to get this thing going. And I know WashDOT staff themselves are, very excited about bidding this out and again, getting this last stage of the I-5 JBLM corridor. And by the way, if you want to know the 5 stages, the first stage was some road improvements down in DuPont around the Mounts Road area. Stages 2 and 3 were the 2 interchanges at Lakewood and the road expansion. And then stage 5 actually is the DuPont Stillicum interchange and the expansion of roadways down there. So it is one big project, but they did break it down into different components. So again, this is the last stage that hasn't has not been bid out for construction. Also, about mid-December or so, Pierce County Sewer Utility reached out to us and let us know that they had identified some maintenance issues with a pretty significant sewer main that runs under Bridgeport from Pacific Highway all the way up into University Place, where it then connects into a major interceptor on Chambers Creek Road that then goes down to the sewer treatment plant. This was somewhat unexpected, but again, it's part of their ongoing due diligence and expecting their systems. And we learned right before the Christmas holiday, about a day or two before that they declared an emergency, that they need to move forward with making some repairs, specifically not on the whole corridor at this point in time, but in the section of sewer line from 75th in Lakewood north to 67th in University Place. And most of the size of the sewer pipe in that area is about 54 inches. They have not yet, they being Pierce County Sewer, they have not yet identified what the specific scope of work is going to be. Really, they have 2 options. One is to access the sewer line via the maintenance hole covers and address the inside of the sewer and the condition of that to maintain or extend its life. And then at a later date, come back and replace the whole sewer line. Or they could move forward with trenching and digging up the existing sewer line and replacing it wholesale. Obviously, that latter option would be pretty significant. But again, we just don't know. The sewer utility, they need to go through their due diligence in terms of, number one, what solution they want to move forward with. Then, of course, they'll have to move forward with bidding the project out and awarding a contractor. If you want to know what the city of Lakewood's role is, we are the regulator. And so really the 2 concerns that we have at this point in time is going to be traffic control, given that Bridgeport Way is a significant corridor, and we'll coordinate with the City of University Place on that as well. And then the other is road restoration. And making sure that wherever they're trenching, that they restore, if not the whole roadway, at least the half of that lane that they're operating in. And that would be very similar to a number of years ago, where you might recall that there was a section of Bridgeport from about 80th or so down to 75th, where Puget Sound Energy came in and replaced a gas main. And the city, again, required them to, do a complete restoration of that half of Bridgeport. So we would expect something similar there. So just wanted to give you a heads up. It is likely that the utility, in terms of when they would do the work, You know, if they decide to go with the option where they're just addressing it from a maintenance standpoint, that work could get underway relatively quickly. However, if they are going to replace the sewer main, it is likely that they would want to do that in the spring or even the summer when it's dry out because of the groundwater and things like that. Plus, the sewer will have more effluent in it during the wet months. But again, that'll be their call. And as we get more information, we'll be sure to share that with you. So again, just wanted to give you a heads up. And I'll just say this about Pierce County Sewer Utility. You know, we've worked with them on a number of projects like this. They know what they're doing. You might recall a number of years ago where they had a significant collapse of a sewer main at Steilacoom Boulevard and Lakewood Drive. And by the way, the situation they have here is nowhere near what they were addressing there. But you know, they did a very good job in actually stabilizing the situation and then, of course, replacing the sewer main in that particular area. You know, we're in 2025. I like odd numbered years. And so I think 2025 is going to be a great year. And just really heads up. Number of transportation projects moving forward. You know, late 24, you awarded a contract for Steilacoom Boulevard for Weller to 87th. So the construction is you know, the contractor is gearing up, getting ready to go. Construction will kick off in the next couple of months or so and will continue through the summer of 2025 and hopefully be finished around that September, October timeframe of next year. Major overlay project on South Tacoma Way from 96 to Steilacoom Boulevard. You awarded a contract in late December or late 24 on that. And then this evening, you awarded a contract for a new traffic signal at 92nd and South Tacoma Way. The same contractor was the lowest and most responsive bidder on both of those, which is going to be good because they'll be able to coordinate with themselves essentially and do those two projects as kind of one to get it done. Another major contract that we'll be bringing forward for council consideration is the last phase of South Tacoma Way from 88th to 80th. And we expect to bring that forward to your next regular meeting on January 21st. And once that contract is awarded and we move forward, we are going to want to have a groundbreaking ceremony for that since Congresswoman Strickland was able to secure $2.5 million in support of that project through a federal appropriation a couple of years ago. And then as we look out into the spring of this year, a number of other construction projects, not design, I just want to focus on construction projects that are going to be done in 25. Idlewild and 112th to include Interlochen to Idlewild. So we expect to advertise for that in the next month or two. And then we expect to bring forward a contract for council consideration in the February-March timeline. After that, we have Nyanza, which would be the last component around Gravely Lake. And that's a street and sidewalk project. And also it is likely that will be done in partnership with the Lakewood Water District. They have a desire to replace their water main within that corridor. So we expect to be bringing that forward to you in the April or May timeframe, if not sooner. Interlochen from 112th to Washington Boulevard, a sidewalk project and road preservation. That'll be coming forward in the next few months. We have two Custer Road projects, one east of Bridgeport up to 75th, which is funded with a TIB grant. It is likely that will move forward for construction perhaps later this year. And then on the west side, Safe Routes to School, some John Dower road sidewalk improvements within that corridor to finish some missing links. And we hope to be able to advertise for construction on that later this year as well. And then perhaps 112 from Gravely Lake Drive to Bridgeport, again, complete road restoration, sidewalks, streetlights, et cetera, which is funded with some of the Sound Transit monies. And then there could be another project over in Springbrook, depending upon how things move along later on this summer. So a lot of transportation projects moving forward in 2025. Though not to be outdone, Parks likewise is moving forward on a number of fronts. American Lake Park improvements move forward. That's expected. Those improvements are expected to be completed by the May-June timeline in time for the summer. Of course, Wards Lake, we just awarded a contract on that, and so that actually gets underway this week and is expected to be completed by the end of the year. We continue to work with the Nisqually Indian tribe over cultural and heritage recognition down at Fort Steilacoom Park. That work is expected to be completed by the end of this year as well. We also have some ADA and overflow parking down at Fort Steilacoom Park that will be occurring. And again, that's to accommodate just the many visitors and in support of the many events that we have. And we've gotten to a point where we just need dedicated ADA parking based on, the folks that are coming to our events, and the gravel lots just aren't working for that part of our population. All of our parks are going to get a facelift as it relates to new signs, and that's expected to occur by the summer of this year. So we hope to bring forward a contract in the near future on that. Likewise, an electronic message board will be installed over at the Colonial Plaza. That's expected to occur in second quarter as well. Over at Oak Brook Park, we have some improvements occurring, a pedestrian perimeter pathway, as well as a new shelter that was done in collaboration with the neighborhood out there. And ultimately, that's what they decided. And so that will be occurring later this spring. Not to be outdone, Primley Park will be getting some improvements, specifically a new playground and some ADA improvements. And then likewise, that's going to be occurring this spring as well. And probably one of our last gateways will be happening at 84th and Wards Lake Park. And actually, that'll be happening in conjunction with the Wards Lake Park project as well. Though actually, there'll be a new gateway going in as part of the last phase of the South Tacoma Way project as well by the BNI. So there'll be a gateway project there, not just welcoming people into Lakewood, but also the International District as well. And then pickleball courts at Harry Todd Park. The goal is to have them in place around June or July of this year. And then there's a number of other projects that we're going to be entering into the planning phase in 2025, not 26, not 27, 2025. We want to get into the community engagement and design of a street end over at Westlake Avenue. We've already initiated the process for coming forward with the council, perhaps in the next few months, for master planning process for a downtown park and a multi-generational center, as well as going out for an RFQ to secure the services to work with Camp Murray on a master plan for the boat launch down on the Camp Murray property. And then also the H-Barn at Fort Steilacoom, we just issued an RFQ to secure the services, really to accomplish two things. One is to get that project design to about a 30% level so that Partners for Parks can have some further information to share with potential donors. And then from the city's perspective, to get a better understanding of what it's going to cost to actually transform that H-Barn into a commercial facility. As the council's aware, a cost estimate was developed back in 2017, 2018 at $7.5 million. I'm going to have to guesstimate that $7.5 million is probably no longer a good number. So we are going to need to get a better idea of what that cost is as it relates to going all in on a future renovation of that facility. So again, that's kind of what we got on the queue for those two major programs for 2025 as we kick things off. And then as we look out into your calendar, I know earlier this evening, of course, we have the MLK Beloved Community Keynote speaker down at the pavilion on Saturday morning from 11 to 12, followed by a welcome walk at Fort Steilacoom Park. Next Monday is the artist reception for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Featuring Rodney King. And then on Saturday, February 8th, Caring for Kids is having their annual Happy Hearts fundraising auction. In the city, we are looking to put together a city table. So if you're interested in sitting at that table, please let me know. On February 12th, the Boys and Girls Club will be having their annual Legacy of Hope event. And typically the city of Lakewood, our Boys and Girls Club is very well represented at that event. And then at the latter part of the month on February 26th, the Tacoma Pierce County EDB will be having their annual meeting at the Greater Tacoma Convention Center. And then I'll just end with on March 8th at 6 p.m., which is a Saturday. And I know Deputy Mayor is not here, but she is the champion of this event, is the third annual Dr. Claudia Thomas Service Award Gala sponsored by the Lakewood Multicultural Coalition. And again, that'll be at the McGavick Center. So with that, that's my report.
And just one quick question on my part, and then I'll open it up. The planning and construction work for both road construction, sidewalk improvements, and parks improvements sounds incredibly thorough. Just want to make sure I know, but to get it on the council's purview, the design for Mount Tacoma Drive is set for sometime in 2025 because we contemplate construction in 26.
That is correct, Mayor. Again, the outline I gave for you is on the transportation side or the construction projects. There's a
Just making sure
number,
it's on
there's
their
a whole
calendar.
list of other projects that are under design as we speak.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. Any other questions, Mr. Caulfield? Mr. Pearson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the thorough report on the goings on here in Lakewood. I live out over off of Far West, and I've gotten nothing but great compliments on those improvements and the street lighting and the ADA, the sidewalks and stuff. People are wondering when the lights are going to come on, though. I don't know if you can speak to that at all. I assume sometime in the next month if they're getting inspected or whatever. I don't know.
So I'll just be right up front with you. This all has to deal with just the current economic conditions. Just to get the poles, it took us 8 months to get the poles, our contractor to get the poles. So now we're waiting on our contractor to get the subcontractor, their electrical folks out there to turn them on, and they're just backed up. And this is not something we have not experienced before. This is something that we've been experiencing on a regular basis for the last 4 years, quite frankly. So unfortunately, Councilmember, I don't have a date for you. It's just going to depend upon when the contractor can get somebody out there. I did see it was last week or the week before, I did see somebody out there. They were working on the wiring. I know they're working on it.
Well, we'll be excited when there's light. So
yeah,
thank you.
And I'll just say also, I had to pull over and talk to somebody today. They were out there with the dog and the dog was urinating on the pole. Don't do that because those are live wires down there. So no, I'm serious.
Last time. Yeah.
That'll do damage to your pet. So, and yourself.
Right. At least we got the light bridge turned on in the right direction at Ardmore. So it does happen. It does happen. Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. We will have lights. Okay, very good. So we'll turn to council comments. Why don't we start with Councilmember Bell tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we have been off, so I hope that everyone has enjoyed their time, and I'm looking forward to 2025 and lots of great things that will be coming. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Pearson.
I won't be able to attend the welcome walk this weekend. It's my son's birthday, so we're going to be out bowling. But I wish everyone the best for the weather. I'm hoping that doesn't rain too much. So other than that, nothing else to report. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Lauricella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I wanted to thank Partners for Parks for their presentation tonight. I thought that was a great story about how they're doing with funding the H Barn, and also appreciate their check to improve the fences at the dog park. I also want to thank the LHAB members who have served for a long amount of time. Our city is better for the work that they have done, and it's important to recognize that. And then finally, I appreciate that we are looking at opportunities to be more efficient, but maintaining the flexibility to address issues as they arise via special sessions if we need to. And I also appreciate Mr. Brandstetter's suggestion that we revisit this in 6 months to make sure that we are being more efficient and that we don't need to make other changes. Beyond that, I will be at the walk on Saturday and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Brandstetter.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that's good. I think that this evening's meeting is a good start to the year. Okay, I think we got some things done. I looking forward to this weekend. I will participate in the walk. I have a prior commitment that I made to a veterans organization in the morning of that day, so I'm not going to be able to attend the keynote speaker's presentation, but I'll get back in town in time to do the walk and get forward for doing that. And then on the 13th, though, which is when our next council meeting is I am looking forward to the artist reception. I guess that I would point out to that is a program, an ongoing program that has been growing in public participation and acceptance. I think that the last reception in the last quarter was the one of where the art on display was student art. And it had come from a variety of things. And when I attended that, I got the impression that it was perhaps even the most well-attended display that we had. And maybe, student art means local artists and it means local artists with friends and family. So maybe that probably had enough to do with it, but that was going with that. And it struck me that it was very similar to the event that takes place annually at St. Clair Hospital, where they have art from the photography program at Lakes High School, and then it's there and it's displayed for a considerable length of time and goes on. And so that has successfully been for a good number of years an annual event that is ongoing, and we may want to look at having the Arts Commission look at maybe on some sort of regular cycle doing a student art piece with perhaps different educational institutions providing the students and that have arts programs to be able to go and do that, and they can append it to our water conservation calendar. That is essentially a student art project to do that. And then for our regular meeting on January 21st, I'm looking forward to the presentation of the Larry Saunders Community Service Award that'll take place that night to be able to go on off. Because I was reminded that's one of those things about where along with the Claudia Thomas Gala and things where there are events that are recognizing people who have made a difference in the past and that are ongoing, and there are kind of fell in with the theme of an earlier discussion that we had today to be able to go and do that. Anyway, but I'm looking forward to the year, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Boki.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to express the council's appreciation, my appreciation for Partners for Parks tonight and their $99,000 check. I think they really have found a niche, or they find their niche in that, along with the Parks Board that's very good, right? That does a lot of the planning and visioning of what parks should look like in Lakewood. And I really do appreciate the work of Partners for Parks, and they're at the same time they're having this very large, or for Lakewood, huge capital campaign for the barns. They went out and raised this $99,000. So I really do appreciate that. And I think it was a very, very generous gift, and really shows an organization that's really got a lot of energy around it right now. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, very good. We have a robust year ahead of us. Thank you, Mr. Caulfield, for the overview on the various projects, both road improvement and parks. I just wanted to plant the seed for council's planning purposes, the possibility, I believe, of scheduling or penciling in a council retreat sometime in the spring for purposes of further discussing or fleshing out possible development ideas and plans for the downtown park area. That's something we're going to work to get on the calendar, probably March-ish, maybe. So just kind of letting council know that that's something that'll be perking on the horizon for that. I too want to extend appreciation for the Partners for Parks and all their fine work, both at the dog park, certainly for tonight and the contribution they were able to obtain, but also for their work on the H-Barn project, and certainly echoing other comments tonight to thank the LHAB board and the longstanding members for their really good work in the community over the course of many years. So we appreciate their service for sure. And hopefully through our comments and our actions tonight, they will recognize that the work will continue with regard to history and heritage preservation here in the city. So a couple of things coming up this week. Representative Levitt has her town hall this Thursday, January 9th here in City Hall. And that should start, I believe, at 6, Madam Clerk. I believe that's the time frame. Goes from 6 to 7 or so. I think there's going to be a brief welcome from me, maybe a brief overview from Chief Smith on public safety information, and then it's her meeting. 5:30 it starts? 5:30. And so that should be her opportunity to express her legislative priorities. Hopefully they match ours, at least with regard to where Lakewood is coming from. But certainly the public have a chance to have a good conversation with her, and we look forward to that. I will attend the welcome walk on Saturday. And remind me, is the keynote prior to the walk or after the walk? It's prior to the walk, like at 11?
Correct, Mayor, prior 11 to 12, and then the walk is from 12 to 2, 3 o'clock.
Okay, and it's at the pavilion?
The pavilion, that's correct. The keynote is at the pavilion.
That can be hopefully big enough to house all the people.
My understanding is that the keynote is somewhat invite only. It's not open to the general public, but I could be mistaken on that. That's just my interpretation of it.
Got it.
On Saturday?
Yeah, at the pavilion.
You had to sign up for it.
Guess you had to sign up for it, yeah.
Okay. Can you check to make sure I signed up for it? Because that would be poor form if I didn't show up for that. I do plan to be there. Yeah, I think I did, but I sign up for a lot of things.
It's space.
Mr. Mayor, in case you weren't, I am signed up and I'm now not, because of my other commitment, not able to go, so.
Oh, very good.
You can
I'll
have my
sneak in on
spot
your-
if necessary.
I'll take an assignment of your chair. Thank you. Good work this week. And I'm very excited about the progress ahead for 2025. 2025 is going to be, I think, a robust year for the city. We come off the heels of a solid financial year. As Ms. Kraus indicated, Lakewood is in the black, thankfully. Similar cities can't say as much. And so we have much to be thankful for heading into 2025, but with eyes wide open, because it's an ever-changing financial picture, as we know, and as our finance staff continually monitors, which we appreciate. So I look forward to 2025. There are lots of good planning that's going to go on. It is a year and a time for us to welcome 2025 and talk about all the great New Year's resolutions that we individually and collectively have. My resolution in part, personally, is to recognize that my 16 years here on this seat, preceded by 3 years on the Planning Commission, has been fruitful and very satisfying. But I also recognize, as part of my New Year's resolution, that this position is not a lifetime appointment, and I don't intend to treat it as such. I do recognize personally my duty to make way for others, to provide for diversity of voice and experience on this council. And it's my intention at this time to make this a very robust, productive year as my last year on the council, unless something drastically changes. So I just wanted to let you know that and let others in the community be aware. So in case that they are interested in serving, they have an opportunity to step up. So without any further ado, we will recess into executive session for approximately 15 minutes pursuant to RCW 423110 sub 1 sub I to discuss with legal counsel litigation or potential litigation. The council is not expected to take action following this executive session other than to adjourn the meeting. And for that reason, we will now be in recess.